and I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. I am super excited that we are joined by Jorie Munroe from the HubSpot Academy. I have seen countless sessions from Jorie over the years, and they're always a great time full of super informational stuff. So I'm excited that we all get to learn together. My name's Tanya. I'm the founder of Chronix Digital. We're a HubSpot partner agency based in the Cayman Islands. And this is our HubSpot user group on content strategy. Reporting is a huge part of content strategy to know what's working and what's not. And so thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I'll watch the chat. Put up your hand, do any of those things, and feel free to ask away. Jorie's here. Let's take advantage of it. So I'm going to pass over to you, Jorie, and you can get us started.
Yeah, and we've got a whole hour together, so lots of questions that we can explore together. Okay, so hi, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For the folks calling in from other continents, welcome. So excited to be joining you today. I was thinking of ways that we could sort of break the ice in the chat a little bit more than just our names and where we're calling in from, because I do think that even though this is a virtual event, one of my favorite parts of Hugs is like being able to also connect with fellow professionals in the space. And I do think that that's one thing that you see a lot in in-person Hugs, but not so much on some of these virtual ones. So I want us to get to know each other a little bit more. And I thought there was no better way to do this than through puns. So what we're going to do, it's a small game. I promise the torture is minimal. But I'm going to ask you a question, and then you're going to try to think of the punny response to this question. There's only 3 of them. They're really good or really bad, depending on your perspective. But I thought it could kind of clear away some of the cobwebs we may have coming into today's talk. So first, let's see if I can. What's a ghost's favorite type of data? Really getting into the data reporting mindset early on. You can think of it, and I won't linger too long. You can brainstorm. It's a Boolean. Okay, so that establishes kind of the tone of this game, right? Like this is the level of pun we're thinking about. Okay. What type of data can you store in a glacier? Any thoughts? A frostbite. You can say I love puns. You can imagine. Most of my conversations feature at least one pun. Finally, last one, promise. Where do computers store their money? This one's good. This one's good. Oh, so close, Cassie. A data bank. Okay, that's it. Those are my puns for the day. Thank you for everyone that participated or even just thought about these puns. It's one of my favorite icebreakers to get people like starting to think, but then also just like in kind of a data mindset. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, like, who is this person on my screen and why am I learning campaign content from them? Hi, hello. My name's Jorie, and I'm a senior inbound professor with HubSpot Academy. So if you've been in the HubSpot Academy app, you may have seen me in usually more of the marketing content, like the Google Ads things or anything about like forms, CTAs, sometimes landing pages, and of course, everything HubSpot reporting. I love that. Unbelievable. Thank you, Brianna. I'm also for HubSpot. I also host Another Bite, which is a Shark Tank rewatch podcast. So if you like geeking out about product pitches or dissecting go-to-market strategies, you can also find me there. And to totally prove that I'm not a HubSpot robot and could totally pass a CAPTCHA, I also have hobbies. So I could talk forever about spooky shows, gardening, cooking shows, and my doodle Bleenie. Quick disclaimer on my doodle. My dog is currently at war with the US Postal Service, and they sometimes deliver mail around this time for me. So if you hear stray barks in the background, I apologize. Bleenie and Martha are not currently getting along, so you may see some of that kind of play out in the audio. Apologies, she's in the next room. But today, we're actually going to have a really straightforward agenda, so I'm just going to kind of wrap up some of this housekeeping and expectation setting, and then we're going to start to dive in first to navigating HubSpot. So I don't know when the last time you were in the HubSpot reporting tools was, but there's been some shuffling lately. And to be honest, there's probably going to be a bit more shuffling when it comes to the reporting tools. In 2024, to be transparent, that team is really trying to make it as intuitive, I mean, as you can with software, as possible for people to understand where they can access their data. This has been a pain point that has been prevalent in the HubSpot user base for a couple years now. So the resulting kind of shift you may have seen, for example, the analytics tools have recently disappeared. They're not gone forever. They're just existing somewhere else. So we're actually going to spend some time just making sure that you can answer the question, how can I access my data, and where these tools actually exist in HubSpot. I will say the bulk of the presentation, though, is going to be on campaign and content reporting. Now, I want to make sure that everyone kind of coming away from today's webinar is able to feel empowered, especially in 2024, to not just be able to access the pre-built reports in HubSpot, but to really be able to effectively read them, and then also, wherever necessary, start to customize them. The reason I have campaigns in parentheses here is you'll actually see that while we'll be focusing on campaigns in particular today, a lot of the best practices and the content that will cover some of the strategies are actually going to be replicable across the different channels and the marketing tools in HubSpot. And a lot of that is because the HubSpot tools are all built on the same platform, and to pull back the curtain a little bit, they're all built using the same data schema, which means that a lot of the functionalities across the different Marketing Hub features are exactly the same, even if the tools are actually built to target different audiences or different channels to communicate in different ways. So we'll focus on campaign reports, but this will be applicable to the other marketing strategies. And then we're going to leave some time at the end for QA. I'll probably be pretty dialed into each of these sections. We're going to be really going through these as demos. So I may not be able to get to all of them in real time, but definitely save your questions for the end. We have more than enough time to make sure that I get to all of them. And then unless you're throwing me some real big curveballs, I'll try to answer them all on the fly. But for the ones that, HubSpot's big, I don't have every tool memorized. I'll make sure that I'm following up with you if there's any that I'm ooh, you've stumped me. Any initial questions before we proceed? No. Okay, great. Love that. Let's go. So first, finding your data in HubSpot. All right. So imagine it's the end of the quarter, end of the year, mid-year, and your boss, or honestly, any of your stakeholders, even your teammate, comes to you and says, okay, so can you demonstrate the impact that you or your team has had over the last quarter, set of time? What have you been doing, and how has it been positively affecting the business, right? The last thing that you need is to be feeling like this. And honestly, I get it. HubSpot is huge. There's data sources everywhere, and really understanding how to effectively consolidate all of these data points to essentially repackage them into a nice answer can feel really overwhelming, which is why we're going to start with access and thinking about where these tools and these bucket of tools live in HubSpot. So when it comes to the tools in HubSpot in their present state, you can sort of think about your different reporting tools as living in 4 different buckets. So you have your Analyze tabs, and these are really designed to help make sure that you're able to, at a 1,000-foot view, really understand the overall health and performance of a specific channel. So you're going to be going to these if you want to optimize the performance of a channel, start to fill in any gaps that you may be noticing in your strategy, or honestly, even get really critical with where you're spending your time and resources, right? So for example, what type of emails are working best, or what are the ad networks or campaign types that are leading to the greatest ROI? These are going to be where you start to answer those really high level questions when it comes to, a specific channel, or honestly, how you're implementing a specific marketing tool in HubSpot. These are not to be confused with performance pages. Now, performance pages are specifically found on really content-heavy tools. Now, these are your emails, landing page, blog posts, for example. And really, they're here to assess the performance and effectiveness of a single asset that you may be testing, that you may be working on, tweaking the messaging on. I say a single asset or a group of assets because, as you'll see in the case of the campaigns tool, for example, you can also use performance pages on your campaigns, and it's going to help you assess multiple assets that may be thematically linked. So usually it's a single asset. In campaigns, it's sort of like your grouped assets that are trying to deliver a single message. But overall, these are really to help you start to get into the weeds with identifying what's your highest performing landing pages, blog posts, etc., and really start to refine any relevant content, see what's working, really focus on what's not, and making those content adjustments as needed. Third bucket, dashboards, gotta love them. So these are your centrally and visually located or visually appealing ways to really start to monitor and track your team-wide KPIs. Now, sometimes on sales teams, there's also individualized dashboards that will track performance. I find usually on marketing and services teams, usually these are more team-wide built pieces of communication. So the key part of dashboards and what you should really be aiming for and going to dashboards for is to be able to quickly identify any trends in your user behavior, really to start to spot gaps in your strategy, communicate your impact to your stakeholders really effectively, and find where there's any real-time adjustments that you need to make to your strategies. These are usually built by admins, but they can be built by anyone, especially if you're in charge of, for example, specific parts of your marketing team. So they're going to be more of those high-level views as well, but they can be customized to show anything, which we'll see in just a little bit. And the fourth bucket that's going to feel a little bit new is this idea of my reports. Now, mostly, my reports in the past was sort of just like an empty bucket where you put like the reports that you were saving. Now it's got a lot more functionality here because this is where all of the analytics tools have been shifted to. So if you think about your traffic analytics, your sales analytics, your service analytics, rather than those being packaged as analytics tools, now they've been packaged as reporting collections that can be found in my reports. So you can think about this section as sort of like the be-all, end-all centralized reporting hub for any of your saved reports, as well as any of the ones that HubSpot has pre-built for you. The name of the game in this section is all about tailoring. This is going to be where you're really focused on customizing your reports, really focusing on making sure that any of the unique data of your business is actually being captured, because while pre-built reports will definitely take you far, there's just going to be some instances where you need to build from scratch or really customize pre-built reports to account for data that's unique to your business. So a lot of that action is actually going to be taking place in my reports. Now, that all sounds great in theory, but let's see what it actually looks like in practice. So you'll have to indulge me. I'm not the most fluid with switching between screens, but you know, it's a learning moment for everyone. Okay, so this is a HubSpot account. Welcome to my dirty my dirty data dashboard. From here, to think about these four buckets. Usually when you log on to HubSpot, you will be brought to a dashboard. Now, this is not the case if you're starting to set up a HubSpot portal. Once you've gone through a full implementation of the HubSpot portal, though, most of your default views are dashboards. And if you need to ever navigate between your dashboards, in the top left section, you can just navigate to any of the dashboards that you have permission to see in the top left. If you're an admin, you can go through any of the dashboards. This demo account has many that were built and kind of make sure that you're seeing those compilations and summaries from the other teams on how well they're performing. If you're ever in a different tool, so for example, you're in your conversation inbox and you need to quickly access your dashboards, most people don't know this. You can click this sprocket icon or just navigate to reporting and go back to dashboards. They will both take you back to your default view, which you can also change anytime if you find that you actually need to be working within a different dashboard than you currently are. So that's dashboards. To access Analyze tabs, essentially with Analyze tabs, when you think about how to access them, you're going to really be navigating to the tool that you're looking to analyze. So whichever HubSpot tool corresponds with the strategy that you're needing to analyze is going to be where you'll go. So for example, if we wanted to go and analyze our email as a channel, we'd go to marketing and then go to email. Most marketing tools have a very similar layout. We have the Manage tab, which is sort of your organizational hub. This is everything that is being drafted, that's been published, that's been deleted. This is kind of your organizational managerial overview. All HubSpot tools should have that. In addition to that, you'll see usually they have a tab that is more specific to the function of that channel. So for example, email is going to have a health tab where you can evaluate your sending score and your sending reputation. Usually blog post landing pages, they're going to have an optimization tab. Analyze tab is going to be your overview of how well that channel is performing. And it's going to, all of the reports here are going to be completely canned. They're pre-built for you. There's nothing that you need to build on this screen. But at any time, if you need to save a report, like you really see a report that you want to surface to your team, your manager, your stakeholders, at the top right, you could always click Save Report. That'll bring it and surface it. But overall, these are just going to be relevant data. Each of the Analyze tabs is usually built to answer frequently asked questions that marketers have about a specific channel based on our own internal HubSpot subject matter experts. So usually they're pretty comprehensive spaces. You can almost think about them as like channel specific dashboards that are pre-built for you that you could, of course, build into your own dashboards. And then of course, then you think about where do I go to get my performance pages? Performance pages on content are only going to be available once it's published or live in some way. So for email, you'd need to go to your sent folder, for example, or scheduled, and then you'd click the asset you're looking to analyze. That's going to bring you into your performance page. And then you can start to really evaluate that asset, see if it's really helping drive forward your marketing goals or if there's something that needs to be reevaluated there. That's performance pages. And then our final bucket, just to make sure, again, this is just the navigational section, that we know where to access our custom reports and our report collections now. You go to reporting and then hover over reports, and then you can be brought directly into any of the reporting collections, those analytics tools that you saw in the past, or you could just go to My Reports. It's going to look pretty familiar. Not a lot has changed on this screen. You have all the reports that you've saved, any custom reports you've built, reports that aren't on dashboards, but you'll see now the new addition is these report collections on the side. So for example, if you're like, wait, I really need to see my traffic analytics, just go to the traffic report collections, and all of these reports absolutely still exist. And of course, you can always, again, save them to a dashboard. So the thing is, when it comes to reporting strategy, is that's all great, right? You have these 4 different buckets. But the thing is, when it comes to building not just like tactically data-driven decisions into your strategy, but a really robust sense of your data, much like when it comes to your content marketing, you wouldn't just use like an email there or blog post there. All of these actually need to be working together and giving you different insights as you start to dive into what's working with your campaigns and what's not. So that is to say, while these reports are really powerful and these reporting buckets are really powerful in their own right, it's a lot more important for you to be thinking about how you could be using all of these insights together in a more cohesive strategy, rather than sometimes going to the reporting or My Report section, sometimes going to the performance pages, sometimes navigating your dashboards. You really need to be thinking about how you can be using them all together, because they're going to give you different lenses into what's working and what's not. So that's what we're going to actually be covering for our campaigns tool. How can we make sure that we're leveraging all 4 of these buckets at any given time as we're evaluating the performance of our campaigns? Which brings us to campaigns. And I was just taught how to do this, and I can totally navigate it. All right. So, marketing campaigns. Let's talk about it. So when we talk about marketing campaigns, are we talking about email campaigns, ad campaigns, UTM campaigns? The answer is both yes and no, because in HubSpot, campaigns refers to the full and complete ways to communicate a specific message to a targeted or segmented group of people across your audience using content and on multiple channels. So you can think about campaigns, as we're going to discuss them today, as a way to communicate your brand in a direct and measured way. Now, marketing campaigns, it sounds really large, but these can actually be like small efforts or large efforts. These could be your product releases, your promotions of existing services, any upcoming events. They could even be something as simple as abandoned shopping cart notifications across email, making sure that your customers are aware that they have access to a loyalty program, any of your drip campaigns. Campaigns, especially as you start to think about building them out in HubSpot, don't have to be one size fits all. And the thing is the tool is built flexible enough that what does remain is that you have the HubSpot campaigns tool, which is designed to help you show how all of your marketing activities, despite how they may be different across the different campaigns type, how they're actually doing, what their result and impact was. And the tool is really designed to help you create transparency across your marketing, but your sales team, your operations team, essentially your whole business, to make sure that you're able to show these are the things that we've done. This is the actual tangible impact that it's had for the business. I would also encourage you to think about campaigns as the point when individualized tactics really become a fully orchestrated strategy. So I want you to think about campaigns not just as a one-off email that you're sending, but a way that you're communicating a well thought out brand message. Because let's face it, there is no world in which a professional marketer these days can be just leaning on individual tactics and not effectively tracking them. Campaigns is going to be in HubSpot, that one-stop command center that allows you to really manage and track a lot of different efforts and a lot of different assets at once. So let's see it in action. Okay. See, I'm actually not doing too bad flipping between tabs. Okay, so to access the campaigns that you've built in HubSpot, navigate to your marketing drop-down menu and then select campaigns. Now, this is a demo portal with a lot of messy data, but I believe I have found a campaign that's actually going to help us get somewhere and see some tangible data. So let me just search it up now. I will say, okay, two things that I've noticed. Q1. 2020, unless someone's just deleted it. Okay, that's what happens when it's in the demo portal. So let's find a campaign that works. One thing I will say as I'm searching for a campaign that works, someone has deleted mine, is you'll notice here on the left-hand side, there are color coding options that are available. I would recommend that you think about when you create a campaign to color code, because that's going to allow you to visualize on your calendar and across your tasks when similarly like oriented campaign tasks are going to launch. So for example, if you have your lead generations or your lead generation campaigns in blue, but then you have your abandoned shopping cart options in green across your calendar, you'd be able to visually differentiate between them really quickly, which is awesome. And then another best practice to cover on the creation of campaigns is, we'll get into it in a minute, but the owner field is not something that everyone tracks when it comes to creating a campaign. As you'll see in one of our custom reports, this is a reportable field that you could do some really interesting optimization with. So highly recommend that when you're creating a campaign, you're always filling that out because it is reportable. Okay, let's see. I'm going to try to find one on the fly. Thanks, guys, as I'm navigating this. Okay, we'll just start here because we're just really going to go over how everything works. Thank you for your patience. I don't know why someone has deleted my campaign, but say lovey. We're just going to do this on the fly. Okay. So you've launched your campaign or at least started to put things together. When it comes to evaluating the performance of your campaigns, there's some key areas on this initial screen that you really need to be paying attention to and really needing to understand. So on the performance tab, honestly, it's set up just like the other performance tabs that we've seen across these channels. Let me actually get one of the campaigns that has something associated to it. Was just fine yesterday. Okay, fine. On the overview tab, this is going to be really helpful to start to understand what the rolling up impact of your campaign really is. So in terms of how many sessions your campaign assets are collectively driving for your business. So in the case of marketing, really getting that awareness out and getting people to your page. It's going to show you the new contacts. So anyone whose first interaction was one of your campaign assets. And then it's going to show you influence contacts. Now, this is an interesting report because it's not just the folks that were, new to your business due to the result of your campaign. It's also the folks that may have already been in your database that have interacted with one of your campaign assets at a certain time. So in terms of this overview, this is going to give you a sense of how much momentum these assets are kind of driving to your site in terms of people coming to your site, what the lead generation impact is, and then overall kind of awareness in your content database of these assets and what you're trying to accomplish with your campaign. Now, let me see if I can find a slightly different campaign that has some revenue attribution affiliated with it. One's empty. Nothing like troubleshooting on the fly.
Always the challenge of the live demo.
Oh, I know. And I wish I had screenshots of it. Revenue attribution. Didn't think anything was going to be deleted today. It's okay.
While you're working, I will chime in that sometimes when you pop into these, the date range won't always be right. Jorie, I know yours are all looking good here. But I found that for myself when I hop in on a report, I'm like zeros on everything. Sometimes the date range will default to be like just this month. And so you miss some of that data at the start.
Yeah.
But
definitely want to make sure that you're keeping a track of your filters up at this top right. Okay, so
Cassie has a really good question too about including sequences in campaign reporting. Do you know if or when we might be able to tag campaigns on sequences? Or is that not going to happen because one is a sales object and one is a marketing object?
Yeah, so right now I don't believe that is possible, but that is something that they're always trying to bring in. I will say that now that we have this idea of like deal create attribution, and then honestly, the customer journey analytics that you can start with like deal create, those deal funnels, I would say that there is a general awareness on the reporting team that this, like, to have that full scale picture is really necessary, and really to have your sales team kind of completing that motion is really key. So I'm sure that they're thinking about it. At this point, I don't believe it's one of the assets that you can currently associate. It's just a kind of a marketing push at this moment. All right, we've been successful, folks. Okay. Attribution. This is an enterprise feature, but what's really interesting with this kind of aspect of your campaign reporting is this idea of quantifying impact, not just in terms of, again, the sessions that you're driving on your website, the new contacts you're generating in lead gen, or just how many people overall in your database you're influencing, but getting that solid bottom dollar of this is the actual monetary impact that this has had on our business. Now, these can be a little bit confusing if you don't really know what you're looking at. So let's talk about attributed revenue versus associated deal revenue. So you can actually kind of see these as parallels to new contacts and influence contacts. Attributed revenue is really looking at source fields. So it's looking at the revenue that you're driving based on like the new contacts that first started with your business or were first made aware of your business through this campaigns all the way through to closing a deal, right? So these are, this is a value that is based on specifically the original source of the revenue, and what made that contact convert and close was one of these campaign assets. This is slightly different than associated deal revenue, which you can sort of think about as, if you think about like revenue, if you think about attribution as like a multi-touch model, this is looking at all of the engagements and conversions in the life cycle of a customer. And if any of those interactions touched a campaign asset that was part of this campaign, that's going to be added to that associated deal value number. So it's a bit more holistic in that way. And the point of having both of these is they actually kind of contextualize each other. This is your direct revenue that was driven from this campaign. This is going to be everything that was kind of associated with this campaign and maybe a network effect of this campaign. So these are probably almost always going to be different numbers, and that's totally normal because they're actually looking at revenue through slightly different lenses and they're being calculated in different ways, but they can actually help contextualize each other and make sure that you're on track to getting that ROI that you need and making sure that your campaign is ROI positive. Having these can be really helpful, especially if you have your campaign goals aligned on the side. So say we started this campaign and we were looking to drive something like $1,000 in revenue, right? Well, we know that we drove specifically $300 in revenue directly as a result of that campaign, but we actually impacted 1,900. So if that was the goal of this campaign, we'd actually be really revenue positive. But again, they're like thinking about revenue in slightly different manners. So it's important to know kind of like how they're different and why they're different. But let's take a moment, put a pin in attribution. We're going to stick to this campaign just for a minute and talk about what other type of reporting is actually available on this page when you have data to showcase it. So this is going to show this second report, or I guess it's the third report, is going to show how many overall new contacts, influenced contacts, or sessions were driven. It's essentially a more visual way to get a sense of your overview tab. And then as we scroll down the page, we actually see an individual breakdown of all of the other channels or assets that we have associated with our campaign. So this is going to show you a breakdown of your performance of your individual blog posts, social posts, CTAs, ads, etc. You can expand actually these sections to get a sense of individual performance results of each of your campaigns and really start to see, for example, if you have multiple blog posts associated with a campaign, how those can kind of create differences in terms of performance. Like maybe you had multiple SMSs that went out, certain ones were delivered, others were like clicked more than others. You can start to see of your campaign assets. This might be a good example. No. Of your campaign assets, which ones are creating and aligning with the goals that you're looking to drive and which ones aren't performing as well as expected, and then starting to cross compare those. Speaking of comparisons, there is a feature that not a lot of folks know about when it comes to this performance tab, and it's this comparison feature. So if you're looking to think about not just, for example, how these social posts did, but as a whole, how these social posts compare to the performance of your social posts across your different campaigns, you can actually compare up to 5 different campaigns with each other in HubSpot by navigating up to the Actions drop-down menu and then clicking Compare Campaign. Now, this comparison feature is available for most major Marketing Hub features, and it's really awesome because you can select whichever campaign that you're looking to compare this to. So let's just choose Spring Webinar, for example. And you're going to actually see these numbers directly aligned with each other. So you'll be able to get like that top level information, who it was for, how their goals were different, again, those owners, and then start to see how they were stacked against each other. So for example, this session, this lead generation campaign obviously was struggling in terms of performance. This one, not so much. So what happened here and what were we doing with our marketing assets on this campaign that made the performance either similar or very different from the other? You're going to see, again, the comparison across different attributed revenue, ad campaigns, any of those associated assets. And you can actually really start to get a comparison of, your individual assets against each other. So I highly recommend, as you also, I know that we're going into 2024, but as you think about your campaigns at the end of the year, or even just the end of the quarter, if you're running multiple a quarter, how you can start to really unpack your audiences and what is working with them from the scale of this comparison tool, because you can really start to understand at a landing page level, what's driving performance and what's not really working. Now, there is also, in addition to this comparison tool, there's actually a way to build and bring all of this interesting insight from the campaign comparison feature across your multiple tools in HubSpot. So say, for example, we see that there's a huge difference in the way that our emails are performing on these campaigns. We can actually go to our email analyze tab and really start to unpack any trends through the lens of the email analyze tab. So to do so, we would navigate to marketing and then click email, go to the analyze tab, and then it's kind of a hidden feature, but all of the marketing tools allow you to filter your analyze tab by specific campaigns. So I believe we were on lead generation. Let's see if we can find a better one. Again, it's a demo portal, lots of messy data here. Anyway, the point of this is that you can start to use a lot of these pre-built reports that are going to give you various different aspects of how well your email channel is performing, and then use the lens of your campaign to start to essentially customize and tailor the insights that you're seeing on this page. So you can start to think about, okay, not just how is my email channel doing, but in terms of insight into recipient engagement, kind of getting really deep in terms of, because this is going to compile, especially if you have multiple emails associated with a campaign, it's going to show you a compilation of all of the performance metrics. And you can start to get really deep into, how are my emails performing over time, or there's data, looking at what's getting clicks, what's not getting clicks. And making sure that you're really understanding on a campaign level what's been working and what's not. Again, it's really great when there's data.
I get a question a lot from my clients that are, should we put everything in one campaign? Should we do 100 micro campaigns? Sometimes the question comes up, should we do different campaigns for different tactics? I think this campaign example with trying to find data is a really good example of why you might want to be more broad stroke with your campaigns. Be like, this is our campaign about our case studies, and this is our campaign about Pardot migrations, and
Sure.
include a lot of different assets in it, or else you're going to have a lot of these where you don't get a really good full picture of how well it's going, because there's a lot of well, there was no CTAs in that one, and that one had no blog posts, and it makes it harder to report and compare on them.
Absolutely. The last thing that you need is a bunch of zeros, because it's from a reporting perspective, what kind of decision can you make when you don't have that full kind of scale understanding? So absolutely, don't be like this portal and have no data associated. Okay. But we spoke a little bit about attribution. Let's go back and see. Honestly, I'm going to go into one of my older campaigns and see if we can get something. Because the attribution tools are also really powerful. It's kind of hard to see it when there's no data available. And just for time, I might just hop into one of these blank ones to just kind of get a sense of what we're talking about here. Okay, attribution. HubSpot's going to give you 3 lenses of attribution. You have your contact create, which is going to show you how many contacts this campaign generated. You're going to show deal create, which is going to show you how well this campaign did at helping you nurture contacts and leading to new deals. And then you have revenue, which is showcasing how much revenue essentially you brought in as a result of your campaigns. So let's talk about contact rate here. The two core reports that you're going to want to be focusing on this screen in particular is contact type by or asset type by contacts created, which is going to show you how many contacts were created by this campaign, broken down by asset type. So what's really important here is focusing on what is generating contacts for your business. So you may see a breakdown of landing pages, blog posts. What are really your top contact drivers, and understanding how that's going to essentially let you optimize in the future. Are you identifying the topics that are resonating the most? Are you optimizing your landing pages to make sure that they're really going to drive that type of conversion action that you need? The thing to be aware of in this screen is it will always default to linear. You're going to see fractions on the screen because essentially a linear model is going to divide credit equally to all of your touch points. If you want, you can actually update this model. So for example, if you chose first interaction, which is going to assign 100% of credit to the first interaction a contact has with your company, you'll start to see those full numbers start to come around. But it might be a little confusing to be like, well, how did this campaign generate 1.98 contacts? It's because certain attribution models are going to assign fractions of contacts to certain assets because it's assigning different credit to different pieces of the journey. The thing with this screen, if there was a report, is they're actually interactable reports. So you can click into it and it's going to show you a list of all of the contacts that came in or that it's referencing in those numbers. And then you can start to see, okay, well, was this a first interaction, last interaction, or middle interaction? And that can also help you start to mathematically unpack why you may be seeing the numbers that you are. Asset by contact created is another one that's really important because you're able to see specifically, well, is it that one? Yes, it is. So you're able to see specifically, it's going to break down on a title level what specifically was the asset that was driving the most conversions. So from an optimization mindset, this is a really important report as well because it's going to help you see the specific pages that got people really excited, enough so to convert with your company. So you can start to think about, okay, like if we had two blog posts, but one is outperforming another, was it because we covered a topic differently? Was it because the title was very different and it made it seem more aligned with what our audience is finding value in? You can start to ask those questions and dive a little bit deeper. I won't go into the other reports too much because, again, they're empty. Maybe I'll find a campaign and do a small loom for this group. So sorry about this. One thing that I did want to point out on the revenue side of things is this idea of revenue by, again, that asset type and that asset title, really understanding what your critical touch points are at driving revenue can be really important from definitely the contact create lens, but also from, again, those core monetary value lens. The thing about this screen that's really interesting too, and why you definitely want to be playing with your attribution screen, is in the actions drop-down menu, you can actually save the report. But say you wanted to go a little bit deeper into your data and whatever you were seeing here, you can actually edit any of these options in the builder. So let's change
the date range.
Yes. Because these are also altered. Let's just go way back, see if we can get anything. No. Okay. Well, you can use the attribution builder. So this is going to pop you directly into the attribution builder, right? And what's cool here is that you can take any of these pre-built reports, it's going to pre-configure it for you. And essentially what you're able to do in the builder is start to customize it a bit more. So as you can see here, if you wanted to really start to cross compare there we are, there's the colors, any of your past campaigns against each other, add multiple attribution models, really start to dig into this report and get really refined, you can do that in this report and save it to a dashboard. It saves you time because it does a lot of the heavy lifting by essentially giving you a pre-configured template that you can start to build off of, but then you have the full flexibility of the attribution builder to really start to customize what you're seeing and dive in deeper as you have additional questions, and kind of really start to unpack those layers. So very important, especially if you're not finding the data that you need. But okay, I can promise not campaigns that have not campaigns that necessarily have data, but what I can promise is the power of the custom report builder is not to be trifled with, because the custom report builder is actually going to be the place in HubSpot that you can get the most flexible and the most specific with pieces of your HubSpot data. So let's actually go there now, because that I can promise offers some awesome visuals that you can see in terms of the types of campaign reporting that you can build. Okay, so custom report builder is designed so that you can bring together a bunch of different data sources in HubSpot. So for the purposes of this one, I'm just going to navigate to create report. Here's that fun AI assistant that's available in beta. Definitely recommend playing with. We're going to click Custom Report Builder, and we're going to choose data sources. Now, let's say that I'm really curious about website page activity and landing page activities, as is prevalent to my campaign. I want to dig into those views. I want to understand more of the customer behavior here. What I'm going to do is select web activities, landing pages, and website pages. And you'll see as a result, even though there's this kind of campaign beta, the campaign's metadata is pulled in by default by just pulling in web activities, landing pages, and website pages. So you don't really need to think about campaigns as a data source necessarily in the custom report builder, because it's often bundled with a lot of different data sources already, such as your landing pages, blog posts, CTAs, etc. I will say this is on the roadmap for 2024, so campaign custom reporting is going to get a lot stronger this year. But let's just hop into the builder and see what we can build here that, again, continues to help us build sort of like a moat around our campaign reporting and get really granular with what we're seeing. So for the case of this report, not a full-scale demo of the builder. I'd love to go into it a little bit more depth. But if you are curious about custom reporting, I did just update the HubSpot Academy custom report building lesson. So if there's anything you see here that feels a little unfamiliar, definitely recommend checking that out. Okay, but for the case of our example here, what we're going to do is choose table. Then we're going to do campaign name. So again, all of that information about your campaigns is going to be accessible once you choose data sources that have this information bundled with it. We're going to choose campaign name, and then let's actually choose number of page views. We'll refresh. And to make sure that, okay, cool. So we have some information available here. And then just for the sake of ease, let's actually just put a filter and choose this marketing lab one. It seems to have the most data. So contains any of market lab. Okay. So as this refreshes, you might be thinking, okay, it's a table, right? It's not that much more interesting to what I already found in potentially like the campaign performance tab. Like you can see number of page views in that performance tab, but you got to remember that the HubSpot Custom Report Builder is actually where you're bringing together a lot of data sources, right? So you're not just thinking about campaigns data here. So let's say, for example, we wanted to make this a little bit more interesting and actually see how lifecycle stage really starts to align with the page views seen here. It refreshes. Well, that's a little bit more interesting, right? Because we can actually see that this is marketing qualified leads are actually driving the most page views for this specific campaign. So this is now, we could actually switch this to make it a little bit more readable. This is an insight that we didn't have before, right? So on the campaign's performance page, we could see that there were a number of page views, but now we have this other element that comes from our contacts object that we're seeing that marketing qualified leads are the core persona that's really focused on these campaign efforts. And so maybe that's something that we should start digging into. Why is this the most interesting for our MQLs? It's pretty interesting insight because we didn't have access to this type in the campaigns tool. But again, this tells us that these page views are associated with people that are definitely in the consideration stage of the buyer's journey. So thinking about campaigns data through that lens could be really helpful. And I know we're almost at time. Thank you so much for your patience as we've navigated some technical issues, but I do have a couple more simple but powerful custom reports that I'd like to share with you real quick, and then we'll dive into questions. And yes, okay, perfect. So this is a similar custom report. It's done with the contacts email, our marketing email and marketing email activities data sources. And here we're using pivot tables. Now, pivot tables are a part of the custom report builder that are just so underutilized because it allows you to like really look at specific splices of your different data sources, in this case, your campaign sources. And what this is showing us is kind of how people are engaging with our different emails. In this case, you could do count of delivered emails, you could do total marketing emails, but who's essentially like being delivered these emails. You could switch this out to like opened emails, and getting a sense again of like when it comes to lifecycle stage, who's engaging the most with our campaign assets. And this is broken down by every campaign with data in this portal. So this is a good one to start to unpack again. Like if we think about email engagement across multiple campaigns, what are we actually working with? Like how well are we qualifying these people and how are they actually interacting with our different campaign assets? Another great example is also to get a sense of like, okay, so of the people that are receiving the emails, like how across our different campaigns, if we look at all of the emails that were delivered, which campaigns are getting like the most recipients, like who are we sending to the most? You could start to splice this up by campaign name. You could again start to think about like life cycle stage, but to get a sense of like where are all our calories going in our email marketing strategies across our campaigns, you could start to think about again seeing it as a pie chart. And it looks like the most of our campaigns were delivered to this green one here, which is a test, but maybe it's going to show something a little bit more helpful for you. Similarly, looking at how many of our assets are divided across our campaign strategy, starting to evaluate our content marketing through the lens of number of blog posts, landing pages, website pages across our different campaign names, get a sense of, you know, are we splitting these up in the way that we need to, or like how are these 4 blog posts leading to this many page views, right? Like I think that is also, as you look across the column, a really effective piece of insight here, because you can see how many assets are leading to this momentum on the right-hand side. This is done with contacts, landing pages, and website activities. So 3 data sources, a lot of potential power to see how like essentially one landing page here, 432 views in total, pretty impactful. And then the final one before we wrap up on the custom report section is why campaign owner is so effective. So these I can already tell you are T-activated users, but that owner field is something that you can absolutely report on. When you start to think about your campaigns, I also highly recommend you think about your project managers and your campaign owners. So you may find that, for example, certain campaign owners are effective at driving different campaign results, right? So maybe we find that there's some optimization and potentially cross-team collaboration that could be happening between teams because certain campaigns are getting us the results we need. Certain ones are maybe a little bit more weaker when it comes to the performance overall. Of course, it depends on the specific goals of your campaign owners, but this could be a great opportunity to see like who on your team, we talk about it in terms of like sales team performance a lot, but who on your marketing team is creating the type of content that you need and really resonating with your audiences, and who could learn from your leaders. I think that's it. Yes. And then all of this compiled together could make a really interesting dashboard. As a side note, like a pro tip, you can add these sort of like informational blurbs on any of your dashboards next to your reports to sort of contextualize like either how you create it, what the report says, how you should be looking at these numbers. You can do that by going to actions and then clicking add images, text, or video. Here you could use just a couple custom reports to really contextualize how your campaigns are performing overall. So you can bring all of those awesome insights together.
I love the save this report from the default performance reports. That's something I've never done. I always end up recreating them. So that's my key takeaway. So simple, but so helpful. We do have a few questions about the attribution reporting and just changes in, permissions and tier levels for that. I did notice that the campaign reports for revenue data, that's not in Pro anymore, that's enterprise. Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak on any other changes that may have happened in the campaign reports for different tier levels, if you're aware of them?
So I think in terms of here, let me stop sharing to see the screen. Okay. So I believe when it comes to revenue attribution, that is entirely an enterprise feature currently. What was the question about contact creation?
Attribution. Yeah, so just attribution in general, like is attribution available for Pro and Enterprise or even Starter, or is it limited? And yeah, the revenue one was more just my insight that's like, oh, that specific one I know is only Enterprise.
Yeah, so I believe Contact Create should absolutely be available. Let me double check. For Professional? Let me double check that. Yes. Okay, so Deal Create and Revenue Attribution Reports as a whole are Marketing Hub Enterprise, but Contact Create is available for Marketing Hub Professional, so you should still have access to those types of reports available, which is really helpful in terms of lead generation or acquisition campaigns, and should be totally customizable. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And Casey has a good question about dashboard customization. Mm-hmm. Are there any plans to expand that this year with things that we can add, titles, sections? She said they're not always so user-friendly. Sometimes it is true. Casey, pro tip, you can embed Google Sheets in there as well. Yes. We've seen some really cool reports with Google Sheets added in. So if there's ever a report you can't make in HubSpot, make it in Google, pop it in. Yeah, doing that, I'm not surprised. She's a rock star.
Definitely. So in terms of adding titles and sort of section headers, right now that option is mostly that add images, text, or video. And like they've expanded the editor to start allowing like different headings and different size of text. Right now that's kind of in terms of like those text-based customizations, that's the primary option right now. I will say though that the dashboards team is really taking in a lot of ideas and sort of feedback from the user base, just because dashboards traditionally haven't always been the most user-friendly. So I would say that definitely keep an eye out for additional customization options, plus 1,000 to that add external content. So you can definitely add Google Sheets. If you have a share link, actually, so in terms of like video, or if you have additional platforms, I know you can add like Google Data Studio and Databox right out of the bat, but you can also add, like, if you're using like Amplitude or Looker, for example, as long as you have a share link that allows you to embed the video on or the report on an external platform, you can actually use that add external option. I've added Amplitude dashboards to HubSpot dashboards and sort of like embedded it that way. You just need an embed code and it's really flexible. So definitely recommend thinking about that in terms of also any training videos you have. Like, I've seen dashboards recently. One of the use cases that was really interesting to me is like people are even using this as like a onboarding resource or a training resource that they can direct folks to. So they'll just like embed a set series of, for example, HubSpot training videos or just training videos in general across their dashboards and just have it as like their main onboarding content hub. So you can get really flexible when it comes to the customizations available. Yeah, the videos are huge. And especially if you're like creating reports that are a little bit more complex, even having a quick video of like, here's what you're looking at, here's how you read it, could just add some really helpful context that saves your teammates time.
I love that idea. Does anyone else have any questions for Jorie while we've got her?
And thank you so much for your patience. I don't know what happened to my campaign. It was a pretty one. Looks like it was deleted, but thank you for your patience. And if you have any additional questions about what you're seeing on your end, like with your campaigns, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Like, I want to make sure that like in 2024, when you see a report in HubSpot, if there's even sort of that slight hesitation of like, how do I actually read this, that we're kind of clearing the air and that it's as easy as possible for you to understand. Sometimes because attribution is sort of like mathematically based, some of the numbers you see might be like a little bit confusing. So if you ever kind of encounter anything that you're like, I'm not quite sure how to read this, definitely like let me know. I'm happy to help any way I can. Again, the reporting tools in HubSpot, I like to think about in terms of like different camera lenses. You zoom in and zoom out depending on what question you're trying to answer. And I feel like with campaigns, you can get the overview really well on the performance page and on the attribution tab. Using the other analyze tabs, custom reports can really help you contextualize that performance in a really whole new way, which I hope you got kind of walking away from this. Like, it's not just always one analyze tab or one performance tabs kind of sitting in a silo. You should be thinking about how you can incorporate the strengths of other reporting tools and builders to kind of help assess the performance. The last thing you need is to have a data-driven decision sort of only taking in a slice of what's available to you. You want to really like holistically think about performance, and that's not always just going to be available in a single tool as much as we'd want it to be.
Yeah,
So
Brianna has one last question. If somebody accidentally deletes the campaign, can you reinstate it, or is that it? It's gone.
I believe that it's deleted forever. Yes, so I actually just deleted a campaign. And yes, it permanently removes it. And
That's
you get
somebody
this.
else's demo.
Yeah, no, I haven't completely, but like I went to delete it. It cannot be undone. Yeah. So the tasks and like the assets themselves will not be deleted, but sort of that um compilation screen, the campaign screen will be deleted. So yes. What a shame. I know. It's always worth it to also just like if you encounter that, definitely reach out to support. They'll help you build it back together. But yeah, at this point, it looks like When it's done, it's done.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Jorie, or you can reach out to myself. My email is in the event registration email, so you got it there, and we'll send a recording of this when it's done, and we edit it, clean it up. You'll get a recording, and if you have any questions, reach out. Thanks again. We'll see you at our next event. Jorie, thank you so much for joining us. You are the best. Great time, and we'll see you all soon.